Welcome back, listeners. In today's episode, we are going to look at the aftermath, for me personally, of when everyone comes back from the California trip. Trigger warning, in today's episode, we are going to cover some very heavy topics, specifically suicide. If this is an episode that's going to be difficult for you to listen to, please skip this week's episode. If you're struggling with suicidal thoughts, please call 988. 988 is a national suicide and crisis lifeline. This provides 24-hour free and confidential support to people in distress, prevention, and crisis resources for anyone who is struggling with a mental health crisis. For more information on this, you can visit 988lifeline.org.
Faith can feel like hearts and butterflies until someone lights a match and burns it all to the ground. Welcome to the Burning Butterflies podcast.
The sad thing is that there's abuse of every kind within the church. But the spiritual abuse is the stuff that just
It's a place there shouldn't be abuse. Like, there just shouldn't be abuse in a place that claims to.
Well, it ruins your soul. If you're new here, we suggest listening to our prologue episode first. This is the story of three women's journey through spiritual abuse and leaving a toxic church culture, all while finding healing in the end.
Sometimes it's just the facts, and if you get offended by it, that's a you issue. And if we can't be mature enough to have these conversations, even if some of the topics are difficult, then shame on us. Last time, we were talking about a trip to California with some quote-unquote leaders of the church. And we talked about an evening where part of the leadership team went down to the restaurant underneath the Airbnb for some cocktails and socialization. But we were talking about how Amanda's husband, Justin, ended up at a table having cocktails with the children's ministry leader.
Originally, Justin invited Pastor Younggun to go down and to not even like have drinks, but like it was a restaurant. And so they were going to go down there and they were going to have a conversation because Justin and I had been arguing a lot. And Pastor Younggun was, really trying to help these couples. He was trying to help people in their marriages. And Justin felt more comfortable talking to Younggun because it was almost like he was talking to a brother, versus like Tom very much was like the dad, And so it was just a completely different vibe. He felt like he was talking to a peer, even though Younggun wasn't married, he still felt like there was that level of understanding there. And when he invited him down under the premise of, I want to talk to him, the children's ministry leader invited herself. And so it was mostly like, she just was like, yeah, I want to go down and have food. And like, honestly, everyone was ready to go down and have a drink because y'all were stuck in an Airbnb watching VHS tapes from 1997. Like, you can't tell me like it was riveting stuff. And so Justin goes down and he tries to talk to Pastor Younggun, but ultimately it ends up that he's sitting there with the children's ministry leader, and she is my friend, and they're having a conversation. She is trying to help him see my point of view from our arguments because she was my friend. I had shared stuff with her openly about the struggles I was having.
In a normal situation, this would not be a big deal. So if you have not been in this type of church setting, this is the Billy Graham rule, which is you should not be alone with another woman without your spouse present or someone like a friend, whatever, because the temptation for the woman to cause you to stumble is great.
Well, and I think,
So her shoulder might have been showing. God forbid. What would have that done to Justin?
yeah. Well, and I think that rule, they've like implemented it like the other way too. Like as a woman, you should never have a meeting with another woman's husband. Like you should always, it's the side hug. You don't ever have a conversation alone
Yeah.
with a man, I mean, I think in the world,
But
some
that's
of that's good for
why it's
safety,
such a
but,
big deal. Yeah.
well, and I just want to say before you continue your story, because it's important to understand as the person who was there in California, like there was an air of those of us who stayed behind and went and had, Jesus conversations on the roof. We didn't get like there was an air of the people that went to the bar were in quote unquote trouble, right? There was something.
Mm.
I'm not saying that something went on. What I'm saying is like I knew like being there that I made the right choice to go up on the roof and have conversations with the ladies, because that was the air that Pastor Tom and Charlotte brought back with them after dinner or whatever they, if they had not gone, like they were like those that went were in trouble and those that stayed were the good kids. That was what was
Yeah,
going on in
and
the moment.
it ultimately came down to, it wasn't the fact that it was a man and a woman sitting and having a conversation alone. It came down to the fact that there was alcohol involved, and that makes Tom and Charlotte very uncomfortable.
Unless they initiate it. And
Unless
it
they
also
init-
has to fact with some other insecurities that people have.
Yeah. And keep in mind, like, I mean, Tom and Charlotte are well aware of, the issues we've had in the past.
Right.
And so,
Yeah, but like
um,
okay, like let's just like flush this out right now, because like on one hand, you could see a concerned women's ministry leader who sees a situation where she's like, his wife is not here and this is concerning. I should do something about that and make a choice to make sure that I'm helping. And I think because that's the narrative that was given, that we need to address that might have been the narrative that was given. And on the outside, like we could all be like, yes, hearts and butterflies. You were so concerned about the situation, right? But that's not what was going on at all.
no. And like, I mean, let's be honest. Let's look at the dynamics of all the relationships that are going on. Justin has no attraction towards this woman. She is my friend. He knows things about, like, he's friends with her husband. She is my annoying friend. It's, and likewise with her. Like, Justin is not her type whatsoever. Like, and so there was no way anything was ever going
Right.
to happen. I never had an inkling that anything inappropriate was ever going to happen. However, it is very clear that Tom thinks the children's ministry leader is cute.
Right.
And
that was, everybody could see that from a mile away, that there was definitely,
yeah,
I mean, and she's a beautiful lady. She's very well put together, and I'm sure Pastor Tom's not the only man who thought like, I could look at her for hours. She can work in the office with me. You know what I mean? But it being Pastor Tom, that causes a big problem for your
well, and as a wife, exactly. As a wife, when your husband thinks someone is attractive. And Charlotte knew, and it made Charlotte uncomfortable. Me and this woman were friends, and I feel like Charlotte saw this as an opportunity to drive a wedge. I would never have said it in that moment, but later on down the road, she tries to do it with Brandy and I, and it ends differently than it does this time. And so, but you guys come back from California. Justin's honest with me. He tells me that night, hey, I went down, I talked to, the children's ministry leader about stuff. Like, I mean, we're really trying to work through the arguments that we're having, and we're arguing over things like, money. Like, do I get a job? Our kids are in school full time. And so it's that like,
Okay, so that's interesting because that makes me think that something, because like I said, I was there and I knew there was an air of something's not right and that I had made the right choice to stay back at the Airbnb that night. But for him to like know that like, hey, I want to be honest about this because to me and knowing him, like it's from an attitude of like, hey, other people might say something to you or something was said. I think something might have been said or alluded to enough while we were there that I'm not aware of.
I don't think so.
I don't see that.
No.
I see Justin would have not even thought. It would have just been a normal conversation.
Oh, so he wasn't
Yeah.
telling you like,
Talking
hey, I
about-
want you to know this. He was just like, oh yeah, we did this, we went here, we did this, and then
Yeah, like,
and then the children's
called
ministry
me
leader and I
every
had this
night.
conversation. Yeah.
Yes. And so it
Okay,
was
that
more,
makes more
it had
sense.
nothing to do
Yeah.
with I'm concerned what other people
Oh,
thought.
okay.
It was more, I am your husband and I had a conversation about you.
Yeah, so you guys were
with
just
your
talking in
friend.
normal, like he's like, oh yeah, I
And-
talked to the children's ministry leader. We were talking about this, this, and this. What do you think about it? Okay, got you.
And it was more like, I talked to her about the arguments we've been having because she knows. And I just wanted you to know that, like, I talked to your friend about it.
Okay.
Like, so it didn't seem like he was talking behind my
Oh,
back.
okay.
He called
Well-
me every night on that trip. And it was, and I don't think anything was said because when later on down the road, like years later, when I bring that up to him, it is like shocking to him
Oh.
that someone could even think.
Okay.
Well, you guys are doing mutual counseling to each other because we don't have anywhere to go. So you and Justin are counseling her and her husband, and her husband are counseling you and Justin.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
because
this
no,
isn't an odd situation at
No.
all. You
No
would
one
have sat
can-
down with her husband and done the same thing.
exactly.
This isn't
No one.
awkward, weird.
Well, yeah. No one can go to therapy. No one can, get real actual help. We're just stuck trying to fumble through
Right.
life, helping each other the best.
And that's
we
a
can.
very true point, like understanding in this closed religious system that like you're not encouraged to go to marriage counseling. You're encouraged that your marriage counseling should be finding a couple that's doing quote unquote better than you and have them counsel you in the ways of the Lord. So I mean that makes totally forgot about that. That makes total sense. Okay, I'm ready. Go ahead.
So you guys come back. Charlotte asked to meet me for coffee, and she pretty much tells me, like, hey, I want you to know this happened, but nothing happened. And I'm like, okay, like, I know nothing happened. Like, he told me they sat down and they had they were having a conversation. There's nothing, and they were in a public, like, really, honestly, do you think if something was going to happen, they were going to sit down there and make out in a public place? Like, no, go find some easy dark corner to go do it. Like,
Well, and they would have made it so awkward and hiding from each other the whole trip that people would have picked up on that.
exactly. So, like, I had no doubt in my mind that nothing happened, but I, in the moment, like you said, I took it as she is the women's ministry leader. She knows our past. She knows all of this stuff, and she is trying to bring me comfort in case someone says something. No, the woman was trying to drive a wedge in between me and this, my friend, the children's ministry leader. Something also is said about my marriage in a Bible study. So there's other women's Bible studies going on. You have like the Beth Moore stuff and, all these little women's groups that go on, different nights of the week. And there are a couple women. Charlotte's pet is one of them. And the woman who was Froggy's girlfriend before Melissa.
One of
What?
one of
One of.
the Froggy's Home for Wayward Single Moms women. Yeah, there you go. I think it was Park Lady. Yeah, that's what we're talking about. Park
Yes,
Lady.
these two women do not like me. whatsoever. So something is said in a Bible study about, and it's guised in like we have to pray for Justin and Amanda. We have to pray for their marriage, right? So these two women have big mouths. So they go around to every little small group thing that they're involved in and are sharing my prayer requests that I didn't ask to be prayed for, but other people are asking, to make it seem as though there is stuff really wrong in my marriage. And were we struggling at that time? Yes. But I mean, it wasn't anywhere close to the darkest times of our marriage. But also, I mean, that's
It's a transition period.
Yes, and it was definitely like one of those, like, were we struggling? Yeah, but like if you're looking at it in the real world, every marriage struggles like this, every single one. But in this high control situation, you're not allowed to struggle. It is hearts and butterflies all the time. It is Disney princess all the time. And if something is going wrong, it is someone's fault. And 99% of the time, it's the woman's fault. There's something wrong with the woman that she is not submitting and doing the things she needs to do as a wife. So,
But why would these women want to do this to you? One, because there's a competition between the stay-at-homes, the working moms. This system pits women against each other, makes one holier than the other. So there's all these underlying tensions happening. So we look for dirty laundry on people. To make yourself feel better, and two, to be able to say, I told you so.
yeah. And so these women start telling other people. So it gets around and Brandy finds out. So Brandy comes to me and she's like, hey, these women are talking trash about you. And BT Dubs, they're saying it's like they heard it from the children's ministry leader. So I go to her and I'm like, what the hell? And she's like, I didn't say anything. Maybe it was Charlotte. And so I'm left with this, like, I feel like everyone is talking about me. I feel like everyone is talking about my marriage. I feel like I have to live up to this standard of this godly Proverbs 31 bullcrap woman that I have to live up to. We're arguing. There's, I feel like I'm called to full-time ministry because that's the only thing I'm told in the church that I can do. Yet my husband wants me to get a job. I feel like I'm not qualified for anything because I have convinced myself that I cannot do anything outside of the church. I have no skills aside from being a wife and a mother. So the only jobs that I'm capable of taking are like cleaning jobs because that's the only thing I'm good at. And that's the only skill set I have. And I feel like all of these women are talking about me. I feel like I am failing as a wife. I feel like I'm failing as a mom. All of this is like crashing down on me. And I feel like I don't know who to believe. I have the women's ministry leader telling me one thing. I have the children's ministry leader telling me something else. And I have Brandy telling me something else. And so I don't know who I can trust. I don't know who's telling me the truth.
No matter what I'm doing, I'm not enough. Like, I am doing ministry, and ministry is not enough. I am constantly getting into trouble for the things that I say. I'm overstepping. I'm being told all the time that I am bossy and I'm not including people, even though I'm trying so hard to make sure everyone feels included and everyone has a place. I'm doing everything that I'm being told to do, but yet I'm still being told you're bossy. Everyone in mom's group is having problems with each other. Everyone is coming to me, so I'm taking on everyone's mental load, including that of my house. And I feel like everything I do at church isn't enough. As a wife, like, Justin is not overbearing. Like, he is not coming to me and being like, you need to submit. You have to listen to me. We're arguing about things, but he's not like holding things against me.
I'm putting that pressure on myself. And so I am struggling with this internal battle of, do I feel like I should submit to my husband because that's what God wants, or do I listen to what I feel like God is telling me to do and do this ministry? And that's the other screwed up side of this, is like all that pressure is put on you and there's no real answers. There's no tangible way to like figure out what God is telling you. And we're going to see how that turns into a huge problem in the future too. But then like, even as a mom, like, this is the time where my oldest is really struggling. He had just been diagnosed with ADHD. We're struggling to like figure out the medication side of it. He's struggling at school. He's struggling socially. He's in a really down, depressive state. And I mean, like, this sounds so stupid, but even like we got him glasses because like, I mean, through like his whole ADHD diagnosis, we figured out like he needed glasses. And so we go and get him some, and he walks out getting his glasses for the first time. He's like, oh my gosh, did you know like leaves have lines on them? So like the little veins that like leaves have on them, he couldn't see that before. And it like that just devastated me. Like I was like, I am failing my children. I am such a horrible mom. Like, my kid is in 5th grade and he didn't know leaves had lines on them. Like, what is wrong with me? School is so hard for him. Like, do we pull him out? Do we homeschool him? Like, just all of these things, right? And I feel like I'm drowning. And all of this accumulates to, there's a night where Justin and I get into a big argument, and he leaves the house and he goes to drive around to cool off. And when he leaves, I sit down. I have a pistol in my side dresser for protection. I get it out and I sit at the end of my bed, and I'm sitting there holding this gun in my hand, and I'm thinking how much better off everyone would be if I was just gone. And it would be so much easier for everyone if I was just gone. Like, and so I had all of this coming down on me. I felt like everything I was doing in ministry wasn't good enough. I sucked at ministry. I sucked as a wife. I sucked as a mom. Everything would be better. Like a few episodes ago, Melissa, you talked about like you had this reality, like dying hurts, right? And you would like go around and you would tell people like dying to yourself hurts. Like when you would say that, I'm sure in public, I was like, oh no, that's so true. And you're so wise. But like, honestly, like I didn't reach this edge of my bed moment flippantly. This wasn't like a knee-jerk reaction to me because I had a bad day. I had thought about this for a long time. And when you said that, like probably a year, if not more before this, I honestly remember thinking like, yeah, but it seems so peaceful, you know? And we are just a few months, not even a full year after, you know, this young couple passed away. And I just remember thinking like, but then they're done with it.
Yeah.
Like they don't have to deal with the crap anymore, and like the being questioned and should you be a leader and all of this. It's like they didn't have that anymore.
Yeah.
And so it just seemed like it would just be so much more peaceful if I just ended it.
Yeah.
And quite honestly, I would have that night had I not had my kids at home. And I couldn't figure out a way to do it that my kids wouldn't fight.
Yeah.
And that's the only reason I didn't do it. But I still planned on doing it for a long time. I planned on doing it so much that, like, you want to hear just how mind-effed I was by this cult and how twisted they got me. I spent the next few months writing everything down, creating step-by-step plans that I told people, like, well, you never know. What if I get hit by a bus? You never know. You should know how to do this. And I would create binders and step-by-step plans. And people were like, oh my gosh, you can create these procedures and these policies. And this is so great. And it was all because I didn't want to leave people high and dry when I decided I was going to kill myself.
for some understanding of how this can happen to someone, because Amanda is not a wilting flower. She has a very strong personality. So how does someone with a strong personality get to this place? She is educated, she can take care of everything, she can run she runs the entire church. So how do we get to this place? So there is complementarianism. Your husband is God ordained to lead, and you, because you do not have a penis, you have to submit. The first thing that is going to happen when you get married and you are in a church that practices complementarianism is you are going to need to conform, because you need to please God. And to please God, your husband must lead. If your husband struggles to lead, you are not submitting. You are not taking it to God. And this also, on the other side, is the men that are not equipped to lead, do not have the personality to lead, are looked at as weak men in this system. So the marriage is set up already in a rocky situation when both parties have to conform to roles in the church that may not fit who they are. So then equality. So if a man sins, he repents, he turns to God, and he starts moving forward. If a woman is sinning, she must continue to work on that for the rest of her life. So if a man has an affair, he tells another man, they pray, he repents, he turns to God, he is ready to go back out and be a leader. If a woman is bossy to her husband and she's a Martha, she needs to be working on that sin her entire life. You are not allowed to be human as a woman. You cannot do what you want because we are so busy holding others accountable. Your social supports can only come from the church body. So what we were just talking about, you cannot get therapy. You can only talk to people. You cannot talk to your mom about this unless your mom is part of it. Dignity, you cannot be fully independent. You need a provider. You cannot advocate for yourself. You are a helpmeet. That is what you were born to be, a helpmeet.
Oh my gosh. And what blows my mind about this is that this is not one church that I attended for 10, 11 years. This is an entire church movement. Like, this is almost the basis of Christianity. Like I
This is
understand
the
that there are
basis of
denominations that
Christianity.
aren't like so into, like, there's definitely another side to this. And I'm not saying that every Christian organization is like this, but my God, like, this is,
It'd be hard to find one, honestly,
yeah,
because this starts in the 19th century is when the complementarianism movement starts. But the list I gave you is not complementarianism. It's how to start a cult. And complementarianism adopted this from control.
wow.
So Dobson is the one that starts on family, whatever
Focus on the
his,
family.
you
Yeah.
know, focus on the family, starts talking about this in the
Yep.
80s. But this has been around forever, and it's the basis for patriarchy. And the people that say patriarchy doesn't hurt anyone, it actually hurts both parties in the
Yeah.
relationship.
Yep.
So I wanted everyone to have those, to understand each one of those steps started with Amanda when she was 19 years old until she left the church. This is being reinforced all the
Right.
time. So she is not allowed to be human
Right.
at
Right.
all.
And let's be real. Like, Amanda, you're not the only woman who in the church or in that setting, like, you're not alone in that, like, getting to these deep, dark places, and I know, like, even in the world, like, just across the board, like the disparity that people get to get to a place where they want to make a decision to say, is it even worth me being here? I mean, it's a very
Yeah.
serious topic. And, it's thick and it's sad and it completely makes me want to scream because you're in a place where God is love, right? And this is your spiritual relationship with the creator of the universe who is supposed to be love. And this is the way. And nothing about the truth of who God is ends with somebody getting to eternity by their own means. Sorry. Right? Like,
Yeah.
and I'm not
No,
even saying
exactly.
like, I don't even want to talk about like whether you go to, I'm not discussing, don't misunderstand. When I said that, I'm not saying like you go one place or another if you take your own life. I'm not debating that. What I'm saying is there is nothing about a God who loves you that ends in that disparity. And so what a horrible system that is being manufactured with a pretty little label on it called Christianity. And I say that not just to you, but also, I mean, to any listener who's been in that, because I think we'll have a lot of listeners who have been in that situation and who have been there.
Yeah.
And I want to say, I'm glad you stayed, right? I know in situations where I've been in those deep, dark places to sit here today and say, I'm glad I stayed around. And if anybody's listening and you are right now thinking, it'd be better that I'm not here. No, that's an absolute lie. And
Yeah.
I'm glad that you're here and you need to stay around because it can be better. It does get better.
This is so normal in the church that there are conversations between multiple women about what to do if they die and how often we think about death in this
And
environment.
you know what? This
'Cause
is the first time I'm having this thought. You're right. Like, because I heard Amanda say, hey, if I get hit by a bus, everything you need to know is in this book. Right. And I've heard other women, like even you, Brenda, you told me, you're like, hey, if anything happens, like I'm living in your basement, like you were planning for catastrophe. And then so you have on both sides. If something happens like to my marriage, I need to have a backup plan. But also if something happens to me, there needs to be a backup plan. And I just thought the entire time that like I think we all thought it was because, women are, the
We're
caretakers, and we
we're
really feel genuine that, like, if something happens, we need to be like, I could see the legitimacy of this. But now that you're saying
yeah.
this,
it's not
it's not
normal.
okay. That's not normal.
No.
I don't have those thoughts now at all. Like, I can't even, that's not even a part of my reality anymore at all. And you saying it sounds so toxic and wrong. Like if I was in an environment now and somebody said that, I'd be like, what's the matter? Like we have a problem.
I lived in this for months. For months, I lived in this. And we're going to go a little bit deeper over on Patreon into this idea of just how much this system affects women. And I'm going to go a little bit deeper into my story over there. But I was this way for months, but it is so stupid what snapped me out of it. I went from a gun in my hand, ready to end it all, to 3 months later, I am given a task by Pastor Younggun, and all of a sudden I have this new purpose. I have this new, renewed energy for the church and for serving God. And I let go of that idea that I just need to end it. And it is so asinine to think that just being offered crumbs of purpose is what, like, led me to quote unquote feel better.
That's exactly what I was just. I'm like, oh my gosh, like I genuinely am so like. I know we plan this stuff out, and our listeners are probably like, "Does Melissa have like no idea what the hell's going on?" No, I have no idea what's going on. But then I hear this stuff, and I'm like, one compliment, one task given by a man of appreciation and saying, "Hey, you are so good at this, and I see you." One, not months, not years, not weeks, one comment and one given assignment and decades of abuse and mental torment that lead you to the end of a path wiped away, and I'm ready to do it again. Like,
And
control.
I never said anything to anyone
No,
ever.
it's absolute insanity.
Well, and it is we are told to be transparent. So when you are transparent, you quickly find out that it's used against you. So you fight this battle being transparent and wanting to help other women. But every time you tell somebody something, it's used against
Yeah, because you can't fix it in
Yep.
the system.
And even Justin doesn't realize until you leave that you are really not a person, that you have adapted to whatever he wants. And this is, Justin, if you're listening, this is not against you. This is against the system. But the system benefited you. It benefited Jason. It benefited Froggy. It benefited every male. And then we have this great advice. This is Women's Ministry 101 when a woman starts talking about problems in her marriage. These are the solutions. All couples fight. You are not in God's will. You need to give him more sex. You are not praying hard enough. Do what he wants you to do, whatever makes him happy. I'm famous for that one. So when Amanda's in this turmoil, I will say to her, have sex with him. It takes 5 minutes. No offense, Justin. Because I am so frustrated with her. I don't have time. We are doing ministry. We need to move forward. So you made a vow. You have to keep it, Melissa. All marriages are hard. If you leave, you don't love your children. Are you keeping your house clean enough? Did you cook him dinner? That was one of the ones always used against me.
Yep.
You had too many babies, so that's why he abuses you, Melissa. Back away from your relationship with Jesus. It intimidates your husband. You must decrease so he can increase. You are a slave to Christ and your husband. There is no greater love than to die for your husband. Treat him as if he were God. Compliment him more. He is discouraged and just needs to be affirmed by someone who thinks he's good looking and amazing. Quit focusing on the bad stuff. Focus on the wins. Your personality is too strong. You need to be meek in order to let him shine. You need to be less intelligent, not have opinions, submit. Don't use your sense of humor, and do not be sarcastic. Basically, become a non-person. He is not complicated. You are complicated. Be thankful he isn't worst. This is the at least. The only right you have is to die for yourself. Your husband had an affair. You need to initiate sex because love covers a multitude of sins. Jesus is pleased with your suffering. If your husband is addicted to porn, it's because you are frigid and unimaginative. Work on it. Just because your husband recently cheated on you doesn't mean you should stop having sex with him. If you are pregnant, you still need to be having sex with your husband. Remember the reasons you married him. Your quest for the truth is damaging your marriage. Stop making him feel bad. You're blowing things out of proportion. You obviously haven't obeyed him perfectly. Because of Eve, you owe him obedience and loyalty no matter what. Stop expecting a Hollywood romance. When he gets home, smile at him more. It's just his sin nature. Give him grace. Stop complaining before something worse happens. He's not abusive enough for you to divorce him. We all can tell. Grow a thicker skin. Forgive without limit. Respect him. You're having problems because you let him have your body before marriage. Study Hosea, who married a prostitute and stayed no matter what. Anybody involved in a system of patriarchy where the woman has zero human ability to do anything is abusive. And everybody participated in it, including
Yeah.
myself. I heard every single one of
Me
those
too.
things in this
Well, and when
church.
I came to the realization that the people I was going to for help were the same people that were keeping me trapped in the abuse that I was in, like, this shows me and tells me now that, like, within the system, women are going to the system for help, but it's the system that's keeping them, and it's every woman in this system. It's not just me. And the reason why all of the marriage Bible studies, we've all said it, and we're not the only ones, like, marriage Bible studies cause more problems. Trying to fix our marriage within the system cause more problems, because when married people get together and they start shining a light on the system either has to be corrected, or you have to leave the system, or you have to not question the system and stay. Those are your choices.
Exactly. And there's only one way to do marriage within the system.
Yeah.
And if you don't fit that mold, if your marriage doesn't fit that mold, then there's something wrong with one of you.
Right.
And like I said before, most of the time it's blamed on the woman.
Oh yeah, all the time it's blamed on the woman.
All the time.
And none of the every marriage in the system is broken and dysfunctional and harmful.
You cannot participate in this church without being part of the abuse. It is impossible. So I asked Jason this yesterday. I said, do you feel like you are part of the abuse in the church? And he looked at me like I was crazy. And I said, abuse does not mean physical or just emotional. And it, there are different levels of abuse that you are unaware of that were happening. And so when I went through this list with him, I explained what complementarianism was and how he had rights over me just for being born, and they were God ordained. But in all reality, I knew the Bible inside and out. He did not. I am a natural leader. He is also a leader, but he is not the type of leader I am. He's not going to make the church grow. I will do that. Financially, I should have been in control of our financial situation, and things would have been a lot easier. So I said to him, do you think that this was a bad system while you were attending the church? And he said, honestly, I loved it. You were not as big of a pain in the ass. I like not having to be part of doing anything in the house or for the kids. We should get back to that. I told him, I said, I know part of you are saying this in tongue in cheek, but I said, it really was beneficial to you. And then he says to me, why wouldn't I want to live under this system? He said, I could do whatever I wanted. I could justify it. I was told I was being a good leader and following God. Whatever decision I made was from God, not me being selfish. And so then I said, do you think you were just selfish? He said, 100% I was selfish. And it was made normal in this environment. And I had no idea it was abnormal until 2023, when you got so mad and said, I am leaving. I am done with this. I am getting an apartment. We left the church in 2021, And Jason did not realize that being selfish is not a God ordained right of white male men until I was ready to divorce him. That is the abuse in this system. So Justin just thinks you guys are fighting because you need to get a job and that's it. That's as deep as this goes. He has no idea that you are pretty much a non-person at this time.
Well, and I wasn't telling him all the things that were going on and my struggles at the
Well,
church
you
because
can't.
when you say it
That's
out
not being
loud,
right.
but when you say it out loud, it seems petty. Like it seems
No, it's a
stupid
form of
to be like,
isolation.
yes, yeah.
Exactly.
And so, like, it was almost embarrassing to say it out loud to people. Like, I could say it to Brandy. And, when the children's leader and I were friends, I could say it to her because, like,
Yeah, but what
we were
happened?
all in the same boat.
Somebody else came in
Yeah,
and
we
used
were.
it against you. Somebody else came in and made it public
Yeah.
knowledge. So no, you couldn't. You were in a position, and it's okay to say, I got myself into a situation. Like you were in jail. You were locked up. You were subject to the abuses of this organization. You had no autonomy.
Yeah. And
Serve
so,
your
like,
husband.
here's some perspective. I was ready to kill myself, but the children's ministry leader was going out of town. She was like from another state. She was going back home to spend Christmas with her family. So, like, my edge of the bed moment happens like at the beginning of December. And literally, like a week later, it's like, well, we need to do something for these families, for the families to get together over Christmas break and do something fun, but it has to be before Christmas. And so I put together an entire family event. But to me, I'm being lazy. I'm horrible. I'm sucking at this. This is terrible. Because I am not coming up with an original idea. Clayton's birthday party that we did in the church gym where I gave everyone a little diaper box and we did a drive-in movie. I ripped off the idea I had earlier for that. And I say, we're going to have a family movie night. Bring your blankies and your pillows or your bean bags or your chairs or whatever you want to bring. We're going to project a movie on the wall in the gym. We have a popcorn machine and we're going to have hot cocoa. And it's going to be like a family movie camp out. Everyone wear their pajamas and it'll be fun, right? And I did that because I was like, well, I have to do something and I don't have the bandwidth. I couldn't say no. I am in the middle of a mental health crisis and I can't say no. I still have to freaking put on an event for the families of the church. And it goes well. Like, we had almost 100 people in that gym watching a movie. And that is the one time I ever remember Tom saying to me, like, wow, you did a good job. You should do stuff like that more. And it was all because I took a picture and I posted it on social media and the gym looked full. And so he didn't mean I did a good job. He didn't mean he wanted me to do things more. What he was saying to me in that moment was post more pictures where it looks like there's a ton of people and people are having fun. Because anytime he referenced that event for years to come, he would reference the picture.
Yeah.
Because
But you took it as you finally did a good job, and now you're going to kill yourself for another 8 years trying to reproduce them.
yeah, but at that point, yes, that kind of helped, like in that moment, like, oh, I did do a good job at this, but I was still spiraling. And it really took a few more months for Pastor Younggun to essentially offer me a leadership position, without calling it a leadership position because Tom would have never allowed that.
Well, because our
Or,
hope was never in Jesus. Our hope was in our positions.
yeah. But it's still like, I still struggled. I am now questioning this friendship that I thought I had with the children's ministry leader. She is telling other people about it. She's telling me she's not, but I have multiple people saying she's the one that they're hearing it from. Her and her husband are struggling. And so it just all kind of starts to unravel to the point where we're still doing ministry things together, but we stop hanging out as friends. And I mean, our kids were close with each other. And I mean, we just kind of stopped because when you look at it, it all comes down to when you guys came back from California. And that manipulation started by Charlotte really started to drive that wedge in that friendship. And I struggled with this for years of, was she ever really my friend? What happened? All of this stuff. But like planning out this podcast, it's like, no, that was done on purpose. Charlotte didn't want her there. Charlotte didn't want her in that office for her husband to look at. Charlotte needed her gone.
And I'm in that Bible study sitting next to Charlotte, and she knows what I'm going to do when that information comes out, because it's what I'm always set up to do and why I become a problem.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to go to you, and Charlotte knows I'm not going to go to you in a hearts and flowers way. I'm going to go to you in what the F are you effing kidding me? I effing told you, Amanda.
Yeah. And so, I mean, like, I want to be clear. I never told anyone. I never told Justin. I never told Brandy. I never told the children's ministry. Like, I didn't say anything to anyone that I had gotten to that place. For years, I didn't tell anyone because I had this shame that, like, oh man, my faith was really bad. I struggled with my faith. And during this time, I'm telling people, like, I'm just really, I found that I took on too much and I'm doing way too much. So I'm just going to put everything down and I'm only going to pick up what God tells me to pick up. And all the crap that I spewed to people when I started stepping away from things, because what I would do is I would write a step-by-step plan. This is how you do this. I would give the binder to someone because I'm trying to set up for when I actually decide I'm going to kill myself. I'm not leaving the church high and dry.
Right. But I think
And
that's
so
kind of how it goes for a lot of suicide, that it's only a surprise to the people other than the person who took their own life, because they've probably been planning it for a long time. I think you find that.
Yeah. And I'm very type A. So what happens when a type A person is suicidal?
I'm so glad that your spiritual gift of organization.
My spiritual gift of organization. I am creating step-by-step guides of how to do something. So then I'm stepping away from things. I'm stepping away from the free giveaways. I'm stepping out of ministries. I'm not doing things anymore. And I'm telling people like, oh, I've just, I'm starting to feel burnout. And the only time you feel burnout is if you're not connected to God, because there's no such thing as being burnt out if you're being filled with the Spirit on a regular basis. Yeah. And so if I'm being burnt out, that means I'm doing things in my own power and not doing things in God's power. The problem is I don't know what that is. And so I've decided just to put everything down, and then I'm only going to pick up what God tells me to pick back up. That's what I was telling people, publicly. And that's even what I told my husband. That's what I told my friends. Like that was the official statement of what was going on in my life. But in all reality, I was having a mental health crisis, and it was so detrimental because it all surrounded my faith. My faith was not good enough. My faith was not strong enough. My relationship with Jesus, the Holy Spirit in me was not strong enough. And it was better for everyone for me to just be gone. And so the cat's out of the bag. Me and my husband argue, which in the grand scheme of things, does anyone really care that a husband and a wife have arguments? No, because I'm sorry, you cannot tell me any marriage on this planet where the husband and the wife don't argue with each other. And the more I get to know of Tom and Charlotte, I feel like my marriage was a hell of a lot more functional than theirs was. They were just living in denial and delusion the whole time. And so I am struggling with the fact that people know that, me and my husband are fighting with each other. But then I think back to like, well, everyone knew what happened with the affair and all of that because we stood up at retreats and we told it. And like, yeah, people said some really crappy things and said hurtful things to my husband and stuff like that after the fact. But, eventually it goes away. And so that's kind of the adage of like, well, give it a week and there'll be some other drama that'll come up and people will forget. And so eventually people start to forget that my marriage, I'm struggling in my marriage, but this also kind of opens up the door to Tom and Charlotte start to realize there's other people struggling in their marriage because now through all of this, it's obvious the children's ministry leader and her husband are struggling. Tom and Charlotte know Froggy and Melissa have had their struggles. And even though they're in a good place at this moment, they know their past. So all these things are coming up. This is the point in time where there is someone, I still to this day do not know who it is, but during a sermon, Tom stands there and says, there is a leader in this church who came to me to have a conversation, and it was revealed that this husband and wife are not even sleeping in the same bedroom. And how can I have that person be a leader in the church if they're not even sharing a bed with their spouse? So other marriages are struggling at this point in time also. How do we fix that?
Burning Butterflies is a listener-supported podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by our amazing supporters on Patreon.
Follow the link in our show notes to learn how you can become a Patreon supporter too. Supporters get exclusive access to bonus content each month, including outtakes, cut content, and supporter-only episodes. If you've enjoyed this episode, please leave us a rating on your listening platform.
Burning Butterflies is a production of Asha Media. Thank you for listening.